We're like,
welcome to the last meeting of 2024 for the Special Districts Advisory Committee. Can I ask to call the roll, please?
Kimberly Gorner,
Present.
Jack Eby,
present.
Ann Baldridge,
Present.
Paul Bushy,
Present.
Jeff Egon,
Present.
James Gordon,
Present.
Al Lau, Hector Martinez, absent, Dave McLeod, Marty Miller,
Here.
Mark Roback,
Here.
Joel Scalzitti, Mike Sims,
Present.
Oliver Smith.
Present.
So there is a quorum with 13 members present.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Smith, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Begin. I want allegiance to America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So on agenda review, are there any changes to the agenda by staff? None. Okay. And then we're moving on to item 3, which is open expression. This is time for any member of the public to address the committee on germane topics, not directly part of the agenda. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak?
Open expression?
No, it's always been there. Just said it out loud.
Oh, wow. I like that.
Open expression. Do we have anyone online that wishes to speak? Okay. All right. With that, we are already on to the consent. There are 3 items on consent. Does anyone wish to pull anything from consent? All right. With that, we entertain a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
So moved.
All right. I have a first and a second from Mr. Sims. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstain? Any opposed?
I abstain from item 8.
Also be.
Yeah, same here.
So James Gordon, Joel Scalzitti, and Marty Miller abstaining from 4A. Yes, okay. All right, thank you. Now already on to our first item of business, which is a draft policy on public member appointments for discussion. And Lucella, are you presenting? Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Thorner and committee members, Priscilla One-Power, Assistant Executive Officer for San Diego LAFCO, for the record and on behalf of staff. So today the committee will review a draft policy that aims to guide the commission's process for making regular and alternate public member appointments. The item ties to the commission's adopted work plan and anticipation of the current regular members' term expiring in May of 2025. The item was initially presented in draft form at the commission's November meeting, the December meeting, and where staff was directed to proceed with initiating a public review and comment period, which includes presenting at the Special Districts Advisory Committee as well as the City's Advisory Committee to take in any feedback that you may have as we draft this policy, ahead of also presenting a final version as early as the February 2025 commission meeting. So to provide some context on the policy itself and how this came about. So San Diego LAFCO is unique for many reasons, and one of which that for the last 30 years that there really hasn't been any changes to the public member seats. And it wasn't until former Commissioner Andy Vanderlyn stepped down earlier this calendar year and Commissioner Harry Mathis moved up to the regular seat, the process for appointing public members became a focal point. This said, and given Commissioner Mathis's term is expiring in May and he has announced his intent to retire, the draft policy aims to establish clear rules and procedures for future appointments. The draft policy largely reflects a refinement of the process that we undertook this past summer when appointing for alternate Commissioner Browning's seat. And as well as some feedback that was provided by the commission at that time, and particularly in wanting to create a policy that provides predictability to the process as well as ensuring transparency. So as mentioned, the staff has presented a draft version to the commission. They did have one modification to the draft, which I'll go over today. So with this context aside, let me skip over to the public member. So I'm going to just review the sections within the draft policy. There's 5 sequential parts. And I'll review each. So the first section within the policy provides the goals and objectives. So the first being that it focuses on individuals or prioritizes individuals with experience in local government and or community advocacy, as well as directs the commission or commits the commission to considering geographic or other lived diversities to ensure that there's balanced decision-making on the commission. It also directs the executive officer to ensuring that there's an inclusive outreach performed and a timely open of recruitment. The next section, the policy addresses statutory requirements for appointment eligibility, and in particular, it clarifies that candidates must be residents of San Diego County. They may not be local government officers or employees. And then also clarifies that there's eligibility for elected officials within county planning groups and appointees to local government commissions, committees, and similar bodies. Now, in the initial draft, and you'll notice that there's a strikeout at the very bottom here, we did have a restriction for individuals who make land use decisions, but we received feedback from the commission where they said, you know, the individual, should they make land use decisions, could simply recuse themselves just as other commissioners do. And so in taking in that feedback, we went ahead and did away with that restriction.
Can you go back?
Absolutely.
So just for clarification, and a city manager then would be a public member because they're an appointed position at a local city. But anybody who is elected would not be able to serve.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So the next section is pretty short and sweet.
Can we clarify that I see? So it seems like as a public member, you could have somebody who's serving in a public agency and a role in a city manager or general manager as your public member.
Can I jump in extra second?
The office, oh, sorry. Yeah, officers or employees of the county or local cities. I'm sorry.
So appointed positions outside of receiving a paycheck.
Right. And initially when we were drafting it, we were focusing in on the idea that, for example, advisory groups within like arts commissions and things of that nature could apply, but then also making the specification that should be there, they be within a advisory group that does make land use decisions, that they could now be a part of public member seat within San Diego LAFCO.
I think the wording is could get confusing for
Okay.
just that last one, but just saying appointed positions.
Maybe like advisory appointed positions, right?
Maybe have a parentheses with a couple of examples.
Okay.
Think of it, you know, just to kind of frame it, because yeah, if you read that quick, it kind of contradicts number 2.
And I can take a look at the policy itself after this presentation and then see wherein we could maybe fit in some additional clarifying language.
I think that last is really saying appointed positions to advisory boards, right? Or is there some other appointed position? I think those are all sort of indentured, but that's not supposed to be eligible.
Right, it says in 2 that it's like a city manager wouldn't be eligible. But if you read that quick, it looks like they might be eligible because they are in position. So just looks like number 3 is all based on advisor.
Yeah.
If they have no fiduciary or other responsibility, then
I think more specificity is always good.
Absolutely. And through the chair, certainly we can take a look at the policy. I do want to mention that this is very abbreviated for the sake of the PowerPoint, but let me take a look at that policy and see where we can add that clarifying.
I think in the policy, you actually give example of our commission's measurement or recycling, so maybe we just expand on that.
Okay. So going into the next section, it is short and sweet as mentioned. It just goes over the appointment term. So in particular, clarifying that it would be a 4-year term with no local term limits, beginning in the first Monday of May in the year appointed, and that any midterm vacancies will be filled with appointees, assuming that unexpired term. The fourth section outlines the process for full term appointments, and in particular gives the commission 2 options. The first being that they could proceed forward with an open recruitment process, or they could also opt for an expedited reappointment of the incumbent. Should they proceed forward with an open recruitment process, then LAFCO staff would then proceed with advertising the vacancy with a 30-day application period. And then the executive committee made up of the chair, vice chair, and immediate past chair would then lead a process and resulting in a nomination of at least 2 candidates. The policy would also allow for the full commission to be provided with a list of candidates and then being able to choose to nominate an additional candidate. Alternatively, if
Sorry.
Yes.
Has that position always expired in May, or is it just that particular individual resigning or retiring in May?
Yes, the position, the terms go through May of that year.
And why is that position different than the other? This seemed to expire in October, for instance, for special districts.
I think I would have to defer to Keen on that question.
And I apologize, the question being,
I was just wondering why that public position wasn't in line with the other positions on the committee. The end of the term, just for,
yeah,
just to make
so
it simple.
actually, so all terms on the commission, not the advisory body, but the commission go through the first Monday of May in a 4-year cycle, but the advisory committee
So it's good.
for city and districts are October. So
Thank you.
that's the distinction.
Thank you, Keen. So any commissioner could nominate an applicant. The full commission would review all nominations. And then alternatively, if they opt for the expedited reappointment, staff would then provide a legal notice and then bring it to the commission for final action. But irrespective of the procedure that is chosen, a successful appointment would require both a majority vote and an affirmative vote within each of the membership categories, and those being the County of San Diego, the cities less City of San Diego, and then the special districts. It is important to note, though, that if the candidate does not receive a majority vote as well as an affirmative vote, then we would proceed with conducting a runoff vote. And if no consensus is still reached, then we may just receive direction from the chair or the commission to proceed forward with restarting the recruitment process. Finally, the policy goes into midterm vacancies and proceeds to say that either they would fill the position with an unexpired term by directly appointing the alternate after legal notice is provided, or we would just follow the same procedures I outlined for full-term appointments and an open recruitment process. So to conclude, we do believe that we've met the commission's intent here with this policy and have taken in their feedback. So we look forward to hearing from you today on any changes. I know we've already established some interest in clarifying language, but we do anticipate proceeding forward with the final version as early as February of 2025 for commission adoption. So with that, I will turn it back to Chair Flunner.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments and questions outside of the one Mr. Salzett?
I know that my agency compensates me for my driving and everything else. So what about incidentals if they're the public person for things that they're going places, or how would that be handled and who would be paying for that?
Does LAFCO pay per diems and mileage to the public members?
Yes, we do.
And what is our per diem?
$250. Erica? $251. $250.
Price is right.
More than you get from your home agency.
Right.
Does that need to be reflected in the policy or is that somewhere else? I'm sure that's somewhere else.
I believe it's in our commission rules.
No.
Are you good? All right, with that, I think we're good. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay, everyone's welcome. Thank you.
All right, moving on, we now have item 5B. Priscilla, are you presenting this or Chris? You got this one? The MSR Wholesale Water Agency.
Sorry, no. We're not trying to trip you.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Chris Kate, Sultan Flabco. We have talked about this previously at the last special districts meeting as well to give an update. So I'm not going to go too much into the background, but more to kind of talk about where we are. In terms of the analysis and bringing this forward and going back to the work group. So when we last spoke, we were awaiting for the release of the 5-year outlook that being prepared by County Water Authority and presented to the rate agencies. That's been since released. We've done our work on that and currently working with Dr. Hanneman to update our analysis based off of that document and do some more expansion on various topics that we have covered previously. Kind of the remaining to-dos is to wrap up on the financial section. We're also looking at CIP, which was a big interest when we went out and did our briefings with other agencies throughout the region, and some of the survey feedback that we got from talking with member agencies. So wrapping up on that. And then we're also going to be talking about the issue of governance, which was also talked about at length in our conversations with member agencies when we did our initial outreach about a year ago. Our hope is that we are able to have a somewhat of a rough draft on those topics, aside from the standard background information that we've been already doing and completed thus far, but more on these ancillary topics that we have talked about at length. We're hoping to have a draft of that in the coming weeks. Our original intent was to have the sections that we drafted go section by section before the work group to hear those topics individually. Because of the pushback and timing on some of the release of documents, we scrapped that plan. And now our hope is that in January, maybe bleed into February, is to have a series of work group meetings to talk about the section in totality and hear that feedback before we wrap up our review and begin the 60-day timeline process of giving the administrative draft to the County Water Authority and starting their review process. I will say, I think it's going to be ambitious to have this wrapped up in February, but that's our goal right now. We're working through the holidays to have something done because the timing on things, it gets pretty compacted at the Water Authority beginning in that March, April timeframe when the rate setting process begins, the budget's being set. We go too long in the fall, that becomes the long range financial plan. So it's becomes a little compacted. We're trying to find a sweet spot to release this, knowing full well that during the review process, the 6-day review by the Water Authority, the administrative draft being heard at the LAP Commission, the 45-day public review, we're now going into June or July, and all the information somewhat becomes a little stale because of that, but we have to find something to do and find that sweet spot to be able to release it. So our hope is to have that 60-day clock start in that end of February, March timeframe, But we will see. But we are working through the end of the year to hopefully have a meeting of the work group in the first couple of weeks of January for our first one to start talking about what we've come up with thus far in our analysis.
I was just wondering, how does this group fit in?
Good question. So I would imagine we would present the when the administrative draft is completed, we would come back and do a presentation to you all following the 60-day review by the water.
Will you be looking for anything from us in terms of, review, comments, issues, or?
Fortunately, there are a few of you who are on the work group that we have. I know that's a different hat than this group. We're always open to conversations and to feedback and recommendations, knowing that we are under kind of a tight timeline to get this out.
During the 60-day review period by the water authority, will the member agencies of the water authority also be able to comment as well? Or is it just the entity that's having the MSR done?
I don't want to speak for keep my thought would be that would just be for them, and that the member agencies would comment during the official 45-day public review period.
Okay, so I'm gonna maybe recap what I think.
Sure.
In February, the work group that's established that has a bunch of member agencies or water authority, they'll have a series of meetings on the section reviews. After that, you would then get an administrative draft to the water authority. They would then have, and I'm assuming that because it's both wholesale. Yeah. They would then have 60 days to provide comments back to you. Then after that, you would consider any such comments, release a draft or public review.
It would go to the commission for official.
For the commission for release. Okay.
And then this group would fit in during that 60-day period, or
Following that.
following it, or went to the commissioner at the same time?
Probably at the same time or during the 45-day public review period, we can work on that. It becomes a timing issue more than anything else.
And one thing that actually leads into one of your next items is you all providing us thoughts with respect to your own policies and bylaws on how you choose to review not just proposals, but MSR. So we can kind of placehold Jack's question into Joelle's discussion about, updating basically your scope of work as advisory committee to the commission.
The biggest thing that the challenge we're gonna have, and I'm not gonna be able to scream this loud enough, is that there's a big asterisk next to this, that the data is at the time of completion of the MSR. I mean, we have to stop. I mean, I don't feel comfortable in releasing an administrative draft and then updating it when new information comes out, which undoubtedly is going to happen. So big asterisks that it's as of the time of release and not when new information comes out, when undoubtedly the water authority will adopt its rates, adopt its budget. That will be all new information that comes up during the course of the review period.
You have to pick a point in time.
Basically.
So kind of Jack and Keen's point, I guess, will this committee be making a recommendation to the commission on the MSR to approve it or not approve it?
I would imagine that's up to this body and what the recommendation they want to give.
So I think that's what Keen alluded to in the later discussion. Our subgroup report is that, I'll give a little preview, the subgroup recommends that we actually do give recommendations and we do take those. So we'll get to that later on, changing rules.
Yeah, and the only reason I raised, I suspect when you get to the end of this, not everyone's going to agree with what you said one way or the other.
To not have full agreement.
Water authority one or that one, so.
Or member agencies ones,
Right,
yeah.
So, this group, which
Yeah.
just not all in, there's some people from different aspects to be able to help you
Yeah.
deal with that aspect is my only thought, because I doubt you're gonna get. What you guys think is perfect, so this may help.
Correct.
Who's giving you advice on governance?
I'm working with Dr. Hammond on that and seeking feedback, and we will, with the work group, seek feedback on it. Everyone has different opinions on that as well too. So,
Mr. Robeck, I know you got something.
Oh, yeah.
So there's 7 of us here that are on the special advisory board here at this table that are involved in water. So this is really close to us, you know. At the last work group we had here last week on rules and, you know, in terms of the special advisory board, you know, I made an observation, and I think we all know this is true. The LAFCO board itself is a lot of elected officials that come and go that aren't real, I don't say this, super knowledgeable. Special District Advisory Board has a lot of expertise. And as I just pointed out, 7 of us are on the involved with water here. So number one, we should definitely be, you know, weighing in on this as something significant. And then other things too. Dr. Hanneman, in the analysis he did for Fallbrook and Rainbow, I thought a lot of his things he had to say were really obtuse. I'm not sure he was the best tool, but he was the tool nonetheless. So why exactly are we working with Dr. Hanneman? Is this good with the water authority wanted?
No, this is what I want.
No.
I don't view any of his work as a piece.
Okay, well, these parts of it are, but in my opinion, of course.
Okay.
And then the working group of the water authority, who is that? Who is the working group of the water authority?
Sorry. Can you go, just click one of the slides. Are you on?
Yeah, no, you can click it, sorry.
That's it.
Oh, so it's the members of the,
GMs.
oh,
At least Jackie got off this group.
So you did it.
oh,
I don't know if it cares much.
okay, well, okay, I just want to make sure, Chris, you and I talked about this, everything should be on tape.
And we have not moved anything from the table.
Okay, yeah, you know, I mean, I'll just say what, you know, the table would include among many other things. It'd be even looking at dissolving the water authority, you know, and pulling this into the net. I mean, I think everything needs to be too. So I'm not sure that any of those people or Dr. Hanneman is going to suggest that.
So part of this is to, in our analysis, we're not presenting recommendations for a group to say yay or nay on. We are producing the facts and hearing from them and think what they want to say and incorporate those thoughts into whatever recommendation we end up making at the end of the day. So we're not going into these meetings in January, February with preconceived recommendations. We're trying to get approval from the board.
I just want to make sure that we're, you know, it's like right now, since the election, I'm not advocating anything that happened in the election, but you know, Department of Governmental Efficiency, and whether that goes anywhere and has any real effect, who knows, you know, but you know, we need to be looking at, you know, this is ratepayers' money, you know, we need to be, that's what LAFCO's charged with, you know, is how do we spend the ratepayers' money? Taxpayer dollars effectively.
Our reviewing consider that and say, for whatever reason, we don't recommend that, or we may recommend it.
Right.
And it looks like up there, you have a vehicle for your general manager to carry your flag down there. I mean, we know your approach with the flange side, you know, but we're, you know, we all.
That's also a issue.
Yes, sir.
Are those districts, are they all represented by the general managers?
Yes, to extent, like, a couple of meetings that we had for CWA, Stan didn't show up, it was Tish who was there, so, I think the only one who didn't have the general manager was, the city, but they had one of their reps for the GM who was there.
And I suspect this is pretty technical
Yes.
discussion, so that makes sense.
In looking at Metropolitan Water District, I am aware that other LAFCOs are looking at Met issues as well relative to the Met Act and who the wholesalers are and the entities. Are you coordinating with other LAFCOs outside of San Diego LAFCO on any like parallel efforts that might be going on?
I actually haven't heard that, so I'd be interested to know if you want to shoot me offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I understand we're not the only ones grappling with these same issues. Yeah.
I was not aware, so happy to have those conversations with them. Which counts?
It's Orange County.
Oh, Orange County, okay.
Yeah. I heard they're having lots of fun too.
Parks.
Oh, yeah.
I think to be realistic, sort of this first MSR ever done on the water authority, it's probably just gonna be an independent. Here's some issues that need to be dealt with, right? Or is it, it's probably not gonna come out and say, we LAFCO, the first time we reviewed it, are recommending immediately dissolution or, but it might say, for example, this is something long-term, to consider. Both agencies have similar challenges, it can oversupply, essentially overinvestment. Here's some ways to address it, to consider. I mean, I think ultimately that would be my guess of the level of what would come out. It's not a.
And also too, that this is establishing the first one, as you said, that they will be on the regular rotation now for future ones, like every other special districts and agency. So we're going through the same thing with SANDAG, going through the same thing with the ports. We're establishing the baseline essentially, and then getting them on the regular rotation.
I mean, and fundamentally, it's like every other MSR, you're looking at the sustainability of the agency being able to deliver the government services. And if it's not sustainable, you make recommendations for how to make it. Yes.
You made me think about it, Jack. You're talking about the MSR. When was the last time, if ever, was there an MSR in the water authority or no?
There were never was.
Never.
This is the first
Okay,
one.
that's what I thought. So there is no ideas that were put in the bookshelf, so.
The only thing I would just add to that, and it's unique for this first inaugural MSR, is when, Priscilla, Chris, and Adam handed over the Fallbrook Rainbow reorganization, the commission, among other things, said in open record by majority, the business model is broken, expedited MSR. So we do have the commission, to your point, Mark, on records having an observation already.
That was made very clear, I thought.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Chris.
Sure.
All right, looking forward to the next 6 months.
Appreciate it.
Because we're not doing enough MSRs on big major agencies in the region, we now move on to item 5C, which is the update work plan for SANDAG MSR.
All right, good morning, committee members. So Joel Barilla, Analyst 1, and this morning I'm going to provide you with an update on staff's ongoing work with the MSR on SANDAG. So I don't have any slides. I'm going to provide you with a verbal update, but I just wanted to give you just a refresher that this MSR is tied to the Commission's adopted work plan, where it sits as priority number 2, and it's connected to the preparation of the white paper by LAFCO consultant Bill Fulton, titled "The Contours of Regional Growth." And so I just wanted to send this as a reminder. If you have not yet received it, we'd be happy to send this to you directly. But I will leave this here if you want to take a look. But basically this paper, it was presented to our commission back in June, and it explores the roles and relationships among various other growth management agencies in the region, but specifically with LAFCO, the County of San Diego, and SANDAG. And so one of the key highlights of the paper, among other things, is the growing influence of SANDAG in shaping local land use decisions, which highlights the importance of examining SANDAG's role more closely through our MSR. So building on the insights from this white paper and having added this MSR to the Commission's work plan, we've made steady progress. And since our last special districts meeting in September, we are still currently in the data gathering phase, and we do have continued meetings with SANDAG staff on a monthly basis to ensure a collaborative approach. So our consultant, Bill Fulton, has been diligently working on his deliverables, which focus on reviewing the agency's 3 main service functions. So 1 is transportation, 2 is regional housing, and 3 is climate adaptation functions. So it's important to note and acknowledge that SANDAG has an unusually wide range of municipal responsibilities. And so this MSR will not cover all of them. However, within the 3 primary service functions mentioned, there are various SANDAG programs and services that staff will focus on, and specifically those related to the commission's growth management responsibilities. So we are still refining the specifics that will be covered within these 3 primary service functions, and how will we approach this? Again, continuing the collaborative approach with SANDAG staff and Mr. Fulton. So looking ahead, we will continue providing the committee regular updates with the expectation that this work will extend through the end of the fiscal year. So that concludes my update, and I'm available for any questions.
Anyone have any questions on this? Are you folks looking at governance at SANDAG as well?
Yes, absolutely. That will be one thing, but those will be the buckets for the primary function.
Also is an inaugural MSR.
This is, yes.
If I could just add to that question or that comment, Chief, this wasn't on the LAFCO staff study schedule. So this is actually a request specifically from the commission. So the reason we haven't done one before is it just traditionally has fallen outside of our main scope of interest, cities, districts, if you will. So the fact that the commission called for this certainly highlights, as Joelle said, this being one of their priorities, along with what you just heard from Chris and what you're going to hear for the second from Kayla. So these are our 3 big to-dos.
If you have any feedback, please feel free to email me or let me know.
And what's the timeline on this one?
So we are still in the data gathering phase, but it'll most likely go through the end of this fiscal year. So well into 2025.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
We are now on to item 5D, continuing the trend of MSRs on major districts. This is Michaela with the healthcare districts.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. Michaela Peters, analyst 2 for the record. So picking up where Joelle left off at your last meeting in September, I just have a quick quarterly update on the MSR covering the 4 healthcare districts in the county, which includes Fallbrook, Grossmont, Palomar, and Tri-City. So for a bit of a refresher, in case you were not at the last meeting or just need a quick update. So at your last meeting, we discussed that we kicked off this project in July of 2023 by introducing the MSR process to the CEOs of each healthcare district. Then from August to December of 2023, we began engaging stakeholders, including the Hospital Association of San Diego, the County of San Diego, and as well as representatives from each of the 4 healthcare districts. This was just to discuss LAFCO as well as how the MSR process would unfold, setting up a framework for future data collection. So at the beginning of this year, we met with 2 prominent consulting firms and refined our strategy into a 2-phased approach. Part 1, a macro analysis of the districts, and part 2, a micro analysis. And ultimately by June, we finalized the scope of work and formalized our agreement with our consultant for this MSR, which is Progressive Healthcare. So Progressive quickly hit the ground running by leading off kickoff meetings with each district for data collection on services, as well as visited each district in person last month with a goal to hand in their finalized draft by the end of this year. So far, some early highlights from these meetings include Grossmont expressing their desire to further expand their boundaries into East County, discussions about the financial status of each district, as well as possible partnerships and consolidations, which is to be determined. And like all MSRs, the short-term and long-term outlook for each district. And then lastly, we've had our fire consultant, Stephen Abbott, explore hospital call wait times, call prioritization, and tiered dispatch, gathering data from each fire protection district in the county. And in the meantime, staff has begun to cover the non-technical sections of the MSR, while the consultant's findings will certainly help guide the remainder of the analysis. So overall, we're making great progress, and we hope to maintain an open and collaborative process with each district and aim to have the first draft available to the commission as early as June 2025. So with that, I will go ahead and conclude my presentation and welcome any questions or comments.
The question, you mentioned it's a two-phase approach. Will that first draft be just for the first phase or will it include both phases?
Yes, first draft will just be the macro analysis and then we'll go into the micro after that.
Are you aware of specific consolidations that are being considered within for specific districts?
I think we have some ideas right now. However, we're going to wait for the consultants to kind of refine those details. But I'm sure that that will probably come out with the macro analysis.
And in regard to their conversation with the water districts, will the committee be able to weigh in prior to that MSR and be included and being presented?
I believe so. I think that that will be released. Defer to Priscilla or Keen.
I think so. The mentioned during the MSR policy through the agenda, but it was talked about just earlier about the 60-day review period. So that 60-day review period is intended to be just for the subject agencies prior to its public presentation, and then proceeding forward with the draft that would be made public for the commission. And then we would initiate with the commission's blessing a 45-day public review and comment period, which would allow for all of you to be able to review the MSR and provide comments. And if the timing works out, we can proceed with presenting the MSR in draft form for all of you to review and provide feedback. With that, answering the question.
Yeah, I mentioned that because within Fallbrook, we're one of only two districts, well, two of the four districts that do not operate in a acute care facility, a hospital. So it's not unique, but certainly different than Palomar and Tri-City. But Fallbrook Regional Health District does a fantastic job providing health, both mental and physical health services. In fact, they were just recognized this year from the California Association of Healthcare Districts as the best healthcare district in the state. We have 73% fine. So it's a kind of a unique situation. And when we lost our hospital, we are actually, and she could maybe test this, that, we are really the primary care. But after 8 p.m. when our 2 or 3 urgent care facilities closed as a fire agency, but they operate on a relatively small budget, $2.4 million per year. I know that sounds it's not a small number, but relative to healthcare districts and hospitals, it certainly is. They give almost $1 million in grants, including they used to pay for half of our ambulances for our fire agency. They now have a lower amount that is fixed, but because of the increased travel times with the closure of our hospital, our EMTs and paramedics now have to travel 3 to 4 times the distance that they used to. So that's wear and tear on our ambulances. We now replace our ambulances every year as opposed to every 2 years. So we either purchase a brand new ambulance or you use a box on a new chassis. Those costs are different, but the healthcare district used to provide 50% of the cost. Now they provide fixed amounts, 40% of the total cost. So they do just wonderful things. And diabetes prevention and medication. They work with RAINS, a horse therapeutic facility that works with children and adults with Down syndrome, autism, and other developmental severe brain injuries. They donate to the Boys and Girls Club, all the food pantry. So they provide just really a wealth of opportunities for healthcare, both mental and physical in our community. So I apologize. I missed the last meeting. I'm not sure if this input was given, but I just think it's important to consider. Even without a hospital, they do wonderful things.
Yeah, we actually got to tour their facilities last month and we were very impressed by what they're doing.
Were you involved in that?
Yes, yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how many miles they put on an ambulance a year?
100,000, I think. It's
Really?
well over 100,000. We are our nearest facility, our nearest hospital is just like everything in Fallbrook, it's 20 minutes away at a minimum, and that's without traffic. And we're our guys used to, and girls used to travel 10 minutes to Fallbrook Hospital. They now, without traffic, again, it's 20 to 22 minutes, but traffic. Well, and going into Temecula, for instance, Temecula Valley Hospital can be 20-minute trip, at 1 a.m. It could be a 45-minute trip in the afternoon. So, you know, Tri-City is traffic, I mean, it's traffic, but.
I was curious, it seemed like every year.
Yeah, I know. I was surprised. Well, it didn't used to be that often, that frequent, but we've actually added a fourth ambulance. We used to have 30 years. This after we now. And our calls has increased by 30%.
This might be healthcare 101. I knew these were coming and I was surprised there were only 4 in the entire county. Do they geographically cover the entire county, or are there gaps where there are not with healthcare districts in the county?
There's definitely a lot of gaps, but there are also a lot of special study areas. But I believe in those gaps there you can find like your Kaiser and other private hospitals.
You mentioned the APOT ambulance patient upload times that Steve Abbott delved into.
Yes.
I don't know how recent his data is, but the data has evolved a lot in the last 3 to 4 months because the fire chiefs have a APOT task force group
Yeah.
that meets every month, and data collection has been the almost primary focus of those meetings. So the data has gotten a lot better. I don't know.
It was
how old Steve's was.
Yeah, so the request went out in October, so it should be relatively good information. However, we can chat with you if we need to remind.
More of this data has been channeling as it's supposed to our LEMSA, the county EMS system.
Okay.
So maybe a refresh on that data might help the report.
Okay, sure, I'll reach out to you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm wondering how your analysis is being impacted with what's in the newspaper about Palomar and other agencies and the way they're running and so on. That it seems like it's almost week to week that there's some new information. I don't know how that impacts your review. Or are you below? Are you above that? And
I would offer fundamentally, they have to consider it because they have to consider the finances of every entity, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily think they pay attention to news articles, they pay attention to the numbers that are coming out.
well, it's already had it.
So from some context, what he's talking about, it said in the paper, UT a couple weeks ago, Palomar might go bankruptcy.
There's about 165 million last year.
And
But
just,
that's the kind of information you already have.
so we're looking at fiscal year 19 to 23 also. So
I'm sorry, what fiscal year?
fiscal year 19 to 23.
Yeah, I mean, the financial sustainability has to be an element.
I don't think so. It's just, it sounds like they've already got the information in newspapers and public is kind of on the outskirts, and a little bit escapes here. Okay, I just wondered what the interface was.
Any other questions on healthcare districts? Thank you. All right, now we are on to item 5E. Joelle, are you briefing this? We talked about this briefly at our September meeting. We had a subgroup meet recently, talking about monitoring our rules.
So I'll give a quick update and then I can turn it over to the ad hoc. But again, just for the record, Joel Gorilla. So today I'll just be giving you an update on the ongoing review of the Special Districts Advisory Committee bylaws. And a copy of the bylaws should be included in your packet. But at the last meeting in September, staff presented the item for the committee to review and provide feedback on its current bylaws. So following some discussion from that meeting, the committee took action and created an ad hoc committee consisting of 6 members. So that includes Chair Thorner and members Bushy, Lau, McQueen, Roback, and Smith, with the primary task of reviewing the rules and making recommendations for the full committee's consideration. So the ad hoc committee just convened last Thursday, December 2nd, and we did identify several elements that may benefit from further review as potential revisions. We don't have a draft of that ready just yet for this month, but we will. And so included in what we reviewed were going over the membership composition, term of membership, defining a quorum, and the schedule, time, and location of meetings. So one of the key proposed changes is a shift in the meeting schedule with an overall express preference to move away from meeting in the last month of each quarter, which is March, June, September, and December, and instead meeting the first month of each quarter, which would be January, April, July, and October. And they did agree to continue holding the meetings the third Friday of each month, but instead at 9:30 a.m. instead of 10. And so additionally, the ad hoc committee discussed reducing the membership from 16 members to 15 members. So currently the committee has 14 member seats filled with 2 vacancies involving Tom Kennedy's former seat and the seat recently vacated by Diane Hansen, which I apologize, I meant to give you her letter that she just recently submitted. I do have copies of that and I'll pass that around right after this. But on that note, as we move forward, we anticipate holding another ad hoc committee in the early next year just to continue this discussion. But as for today, just really looking to seek your feedback or any input that you may have. And just to confirm, so as soon as we do make amendments to the bylaws, it will need to be presented to the commission for final approval. But with that, I'll turn it over to Chair Thorner or any other ad hoc committee members if you want to touch on some key highlights.
Somebody's not happy.
I know.
I will tell you that the subcommittee group was very happy and we did kind of very concisely come up with recommendations. Taking it down to 15 and moving the quorum to 8. Having an odd number for votes, because one of the things we did discuss was that there would be an expectation going forward that we would actually take votes. And the majority vote would make a recommendation to the commission. We also said that our goal, we couldn't mandate who puts their hat in the ring for the special districts, but our goal was to have as many different types of special districts in as many geographic areas as possible. So we're going to encourage that. We also agreed no term limits. However, a term would be limited to 4 years, and then we're going to stagger 25 and 27 so that not all of us turned over at the same time. There would be some continuity. And then especially for scheduling for a lot of us, the switch to January, April, July, and October, but having a very specific time, because a lot of you have a bunch of other regional meetings that happen on Fridays as well to get attendance better. And then we can call a special meeting at any time. That was the other discussion point, as long as 8 committee members are present for the forum. And then an intent going forward that we actually do vote and make recommendations to the commission. So does anybody else who's on the ad hoc want to add anything? I thank you guys for your time. I thought it was a very productive meeting.
I think that captured everything. Yeah.
Virtual meetings.
We did not address virtual meetings. We do currently have the ability for remote participation, but I do believe you're supposed to have a business location and the location of the meeting for listed on the agenda. We did have this discussion because one of the intent was at the last meeting was kind of to try to move us around so that we could go to different agencies. So long as the time was set and it was 9:30, it would make it easier for us to go South County, North County. It was the time and date specific and the location could change. I prefer in person as well.
I think the only caveat, Kim, would be that we kind of bless that off in October for the next year so that it would get on calendars.
Yes.
And not cost.
That's the drawback for me is I don't know if it is, and then in Victoria are I'm committed a year in advance usually for it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so that's just problematic. But knowing in advance is helpful because knowing 2 weeks or 3 weeks before is really wonderful. Two special things.
So you said this group would vote on what?
Oh, we're gonna have to bring back these. These are our
No, but I mean, say we're gonna
Oh.
vote, what are we voting on?
Recommendations to the commission.
So for example, I think
So like if someone brought detachment to us,
last time. Whatever.
Yeah, so what I was getting at is going along with the first one, are we? What, you know, our scope is in the front end of it, so like on MSRs, we're not gonna vote.
Good. It depends on what the action.
So I guess what do we wanna vote on? Because the way it's written up front, it's really jurisdictional changes, it seems like more
Yes.
often than not, so.
So just if through the chair, I think that the question for the voting component has been, and this was brought up during the Fallbrook Rainbow decision. The commission has an expectation, and in particular on what could be considered controversial topics. You could decide what controversial is, that you do weigh in. And I know one of the challenges that came up in Fallbrook Rainbow is when you have made recommendations, typically it's been done by like majority or like uniform. Well, what if you're not going to be able to get that?
That's what we got, it wasn't consensus, so we kind of just said.
so the way that it's currently written and what we're proposing is there are 15 committee members, 8 carries the vote. Each committee member is entitled to 1 vote. An adoption of a recommendation requires a majority affirmative vote, and we recommending 5 to 8. It's a simple majority.
Right, you know, I'm getting more to what exactly are we voting? That's what do we think? Should we be voting on MSRs? Are we just voting if it's a jurisdictional change? You know, the way the front of this in terms of what this committee does, it's written more like jurisdictional changes, sphere of influence or advising. So I guess that's what I was getting at. Do we want, or does LAFCO want us to vote when you do an MSR? Do you want us to say, we think this is good, we looked at it, we support it?
I think the question for an MSR through the chair is, do you believe, because this is the question we ask the commission, do you believe that staff has brought you information that allows you to make informed decisions? And so perhaps that's a consideration here. As an example.
Yeah, I just look at it as if we could agree on input, advisory input to the commission. In whatever area that happens to be with LAFCO, whether it's jurisdictional or it's something else, we should have the opportunity to provide that input as long as we vote on it. And if we don't have a successful vote, then we basically don't have any formal. You just go to the commission and say the committee, there's consensus. Right. I guess my biggest concern, and I raised it during the meeting, was we have 16 members right now. And if you look at a quorum of 15 is 9. Or 8.
Yeah, we had 6.
And out of that, as long as you have a majority voting for, it passes, which is 5 of 8. So basically you have a passing, an advisory that's passing on the basis of 5 affirmatives, not 8 affirmatives.
You have to have 8 per quorum, and it's a simple majority of those present, which is one of the reasons why we decided to set the meeting time and date with specificity a year in advance.
Yeah.
So that everybody would actually be in attendance to
Forecast it.
participate. I'll tell you, we used to do it this way. I've been on it 18 years now. And I think the Ramona MSR came up and the committee made a recommendation, and you sent the chair, the vice chair to testify at the LAFCO hearing as to what the recommendation of the committee was. Right now, the statement of purpose in our rules said that we're to assist LAFCO in reviewing boundary changes, spheres of influence, adoption amendments, special studies, and making recommendations to the commission. So pretty much everything's on the table as far as making recommendations. And I think I heard the same thing as Keen, is there's an expectation that we do that.
Yeah, again, my concern is, does a proposal pass on the basis of 5 votes or 8 votes? And I would think that even if you have just a quorum present, it would take all of the quorum to vote for it in order for it to pass, because you're not taking, the other people just don't have to be there. And the issue I have is, if you just delay a proposal until not all people can show up, you have a better shot at getting it passed. And I don't know whether that's the intent or not.
Can I ask though, is that different than when we operate just with consensus?
Again, it is consensus of how many. That's my concern.
But we're also just advisory, right? At the
But
end of the day.
so are planning groups.
Yeah,
And
but-
planning groups are very specific that you have to hit the majority of the authorized members of the planning group in order for something to pass. And, if you have 15, that means 8. If you have 8, that still means 8.
But on the flip side, if,
Okay.
at our agency, if you have a quorum of 3, we have a 5-member board, and 2 of those 3 vote for a recommendation, it passes. And that's kind of the frame of reference I'm looking
You
at.
could also do the thresholds for.
The other thing is, this isn't changing, we didn't change any part of this rule. The only thing we changed, right now, the rule says you have a quorum if 5 members show up, and we didn't think that made
switched that
sense.
to 8, we actually made the.
Out of 16, and then so the simple majority vote, and the onus is on, we've all made commitments to participate on this, and if we don't show up and something's important to us, as I said in the meeting, we snooze, we lose, and that's the way it works, so.
Yeah, I think if something's important, people will show up, so I don't think that really matters. So I think still it's kind of circle back, so if we want to vote on something, it's really gonna come down to probably the chair working with the executive officer saying, here's something we think we should vote on. We're sort of leaving it that way.
Yeah.
Of saying it's gonna be sort of that, or so if people want to say, hey, we should vote on this, they would speak to the chair and work with.
Yeah, and that would be really kind of an organization, and we present information items to our advisory committees, we present recommendations, so it really depends on the context which is presented to the committee.
So like, just by way of example, today, this item is presented to the committee for information for discussion. The next time you see it, it will be presented for action, right? And it'll say in the staff report. So I think we can be maybe a little bit better about saying, hey, information only and input versus
The good news, Kim, is we have a quorum even according to the existing rules and the potential new rules, right? So.
When we vote on something, the advisory group, say there's 10 people to the meeting and it passes 6-4, does that 6-4 get relayed to the commission, or is it just the group voted to do X?
I think that's up to the executive officer.
It's kind of like a close vote, do they need to know that? It's
Well, everything here is public vote, so the minutes, it's all gonna be reflected, it's not like secret ballot.
whether or not they look at it,
Right, and then again,
but
it's
it's
up
up to
to,
report it out.
well, I mean, that generally is up to the executive office, or if we, again, in some cases, the special district advisory can present it, so if in that case you thought it was important that she relayed, you voted no, then that would be good information to relay to
I
her.
think that's helpful for the commission to know that it must.
disclose it,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think a unanimous one would carry more weight versus divided, yeah, I agree.
But again, unanimous with 15 members or unanimous with 8?
Also, this
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, could be really.
It actually brings up a good point. The one thing we discussed at the committee is we have an even number of overall committee units. Now we have an even number for a quorum, so you can have a split. Well, so,
you could, it's possible.
think the odds are low.
yes, I'm okay with that.
The meetings just go longer until it shifts.
That's what I'm worried about.
Beat you down.
Or using that.
There's no hung juries here or anything like that.
two follow-up questions that we had, and I do want to, because you gave us this information, so I do want to share it with everyone. We had a question, did LAFCO give the advisory committee authority to amend their own rules? And the answer is yes, via the adopted work plan, which prioritizes a review of the bylaws. And then does LAFCO need to approve the special district advisory committee rules amendments? LAFCO staff would take the revised rules to the committee for final approval. So after we would bring them back, then they go to LAFCO. Any other comments, questions, suggestions on this? So we would hear this back at our next special district advisory committee, which if we were selecting the new schedule would be the third Friday in January, or did we propose to skip the January meeting?
You had proposed to skip
I
the
thought so, I thought so. So our next commission meeting would be the third Friday in April at 9:30 a.m.
And part of the rationale for that was just for the very reason we're here today, it's for, a few days before Christmas and just not to conflict with the major holidays. January, you have all your election results from in, so who our new committee and commission members might be depending on how elections go. I'm sure you're gonna do this, Joelle, but when this comes back to the committee as a whole, we'll have a bold strikeout of the existing policy.
Of the red lines.
All right, thank you very much for getting
Thank
this
you.
done.
Thank you so much.
That then concludes.
Question.
Oh.
You mentioned the elections and
Yes.
the terms
Yes.
briefly, but you did not. How that's.
So 25 and 27. So the thought, generally the elections are in October. Most of us are way past our terms right now.
We're all expired.
For all of us. So the elections every 2 years and odd numbered calendar years, 25 and 27, keep elections staggered so the committee members don't term out. This was one of the discussions actually, was that we talked about moving the elections to the January-February timeline so that they were post federal elections, because we do have a lot of turnover at home agencies. And so that was a discussion point, instead of having the elections in October, moving them to like February after, also in an odd numbered year after elections at the home agencies.
Is there currently an open seat with the resolution, or do you reduce?
There is and there isn't. So there were 16, 2 are gone, Diane Hansen, and then Tom Kennedy, both gone. Until we have an election, the chair appoints. I do have 2 interested candidates from a healthcare district. I don't know either of the individuals, so I need to talk to both of them, but I do think, especially with what's going on, and appointing someone from a healthcare district is obviously the smart thing to do until we have
You
elections.
may have received a number of hours in.
I got a couple from different people, yeah. So I do believe it'll be someone from healthcare, just especially with the vacancy. But then, yeah, no, Tony's working,
Oh.
yes.
Oh, that's hard.
And so I think then staff should probably maybe bring back, when we bring back the bylaws, which group of folks, the first group of folks for the election in 2025. And I believe there's a bunch of us, and then this second half would be 2027.
You'll notify members when they stand for election.
Yes, staff will, have to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I genuinely can't remember myself. Does anybody remember when their term expires?
There's no one in my list today.
Okay,
Listen,
But part of the discussion was like right now in the rules, it's annual elections and it's just not practical with the resources. So we're way expired, up and bottom, and wicked expired.
all right. With that, we would move on to committee member reports. Does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss, report on from their home agency? Yes.
I'd just like to share that our board president, Chief Don Bus, we just learned that he was appointed or recognized as Fire Chief of the Year from the San Diego County Fire Chiefs Association. So,
All right. Yes, he was.
Anybody else have anything?
On topic of switching positions, chief and staff, I'm due to retire June 25. So I'm not sure where I am in that term. I'm sure I'm expired.
We're keeping you the whole time.
We're gonna create a public member for the advisory.
However that's gonna work, I'll be
Okay.
happy to volunteer my replacement to come in and go on a point.
Okay, I'll work with Joelle on what the timing of the elections are, maybe that. But congratulations on your upcoming retirement.
See.
You never retire from something, retire to something. And if you don't know what the two is, you're not ready.
I'll be ready for the years that I retired. But
Okay.
Andy, that's just Thursday. Like secretary.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
you
Uh-oh.
gotta run that past the president first. That would be me.
Just go back to the elections. I
Yeah.
was a little confused. We don't have a date set up yet for when we'll do in 25.
We do not, do
We don't-
we?
We don't even have a rule. You know,
We have a
We
ballpark
do?
idea.
Oh, sorry, no, we
The
don't.
election maybe in
Okay,
26.
but yeah, I think we need to
Oh,
vote
the
on the
bylaws.
change.
We need to approve
to
the bylaws.
And so I think it would happen soon thereafter.
And how do
And I
you
think
choose
you-
the first,
The first round,
yes.
in my mind, and this is staff's discretion, in my mind, there are those of us whose terms expired a couple of years ago. We go first.
the most excited.
The most expired is the.
Expired by.
Used by.
A year and a half ago. And so I would, whoever's gets elected in my era would be the first round to have elections next year. And those that are probably not expired, you'd be 27.
And the election process would be the same.
Oh, yeah.
That he,
Yeah, we didn't change that at all. Those are each special district gets the vote, they go through staff, that's the same as always.
so we would have a whole slate of incumbents.
Yes.
What?
If ever.
Well, but it's half and half. We're only like, I'm assuming there's like 8 of us that would be up for election in 2025. And the other 7 would be up for election in 2027. That is intentional so as not to have all of the knowledge base disappear at once.
Right.
So would you have I noticed on the website, there are some that you said it's, I think, last I noticed, it's some expired. Would they be there for election this year, the 2025?
Well, you have them right there. If you have them, whoever the oldest ones go first.
I don't see it here, but I saw it on the website earlier. And my second question is, that you mentioned the balancing committee. How and when would you propose to do that with the agencies?
So that is, we had a discussion at the subcommittee. That's not something we can force, right? Because I can't say that Helix is going to run. It's a hope. But it's also guidance for the chair. If there is a vacancy during someone leaves, the thought is do we have other fire or healthcare? Is it North County, South County? It's more for guidance for appointments between elections. But we can't force who actually wins elections.
So just to make sure we don't get caught in a loop here, 25 election, so we've got to wait until the bylaws get approved, and then we've got to vote on them first.
And then
they've got to go to
Then the commission has to vote on it.
Because we're not going to vote on them until our next meeting, which is April. So then the commission will vote on it in May,
Yes.
and then CSDA has to hold an election.
Yeah.
So are we going So it'd be sort of the end of
Wait,
twenty.
is that where we do, CSDA?
No,
Oh, we do the forum. We do like,
Oh, yeah.
sorry.
the candidate forum.
Oh,
So
yeah.
LAFCO holds the election, but you've got an election that board,
Right, right.
board's got to take action, which is a 60-day window maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to make sure we don't say 25 and we end up in 20.
You do a special meeting for the purpose of approving that one. I know.
And then would we do it the
Anyway,
same
so-
time every year for the 2017, or
Yes.
would we?
Yes.
Okay. So that's all.
The elections in November and December-ish.
The thought of the committee was to make sure to do them after the home elections, so general elections.
Because you were saying January, so if you're trying
If
January,
possible.
yeah, then it would be January 26th. Anyway, that's just that timeline, making
But
sure.
it's work in progress.
The option is to hold a special meeting of this group in January, consider this and get it to the full commission.
Concept.
February.
So,
A bad idea, that way we get this calendar one sooner than later for the subsequent years.
and I suspect we, as staff goes through this, there's gonna be some sort of true up here, that's something you guys can look at and advise us on. Because obviously none of us know whether we're supposed to be here or not, so.
We're here by executive order.
I just assumed because I got the email there. So, sure.
So is someone making the recommendation here that we have a special meeting in January just for the purposes of voting on the changes to the bylaws so that we can then get them to commission and start the elections in 25?
I'll make that recommendation.
Oh, that's
Well,
good.
time, did you want another subgroup meeting before we did that, or is this enough either to roll forward?
I think it would be beneficial just to have one more, just to go over the other specific language, but I know with timing. We could adjust it to February if you wanted to, meet in January, hold it in February.
So let's do the elections.
Just if we want to hold, then we need your election, that's the only rush.
On 27, we want to go.
What did you say, so for the rules?
Seven.
Oh, we, this committee was inconsistent with statute.
I'd say that, the other thing to think about, although we think this is really important. I don't think anyone's noticed that we've overrun our terms. I don't know how much people care. So the other thing is that's like, just do it in January of 26 and in 28 and not try to.
Yeah.
So in other words, do the rule, start it up in 26.
Do the election, and so it's effective January, whatever you want.
All right, that's a good idea.
That makes a lot of sense.
Is that a recommendation that we, instead of 25, 27, we go 26, 28?
We'll adjust that on the,
And we'll
on the
adjust that on the
recommended
rules that we
policy.
bring
That's
back
more
in
efficient.
April. All right, I have a first, I have a second.
I don't even think we need.
All
to
the, I want it. All the.
Well. She wants it on the record.
Very good.
So. My. Which I'm pretty sure I'll be able to make.
A lot of thought put into this, thank you. I think, you know what, it's gonna give a good end product and it's gonna give a lot of clarity, so I appreciate that effort. Any other committee member reports? All right, with that, we are now on to the executive officer report.
Just very quickly on my end, so about this time last year, I advised the committee that the commission had taken action a little less than a year to assert oversight of the Port of San Diego. There was some discussions that followed afterwards, and I'm pleased to report with the help of certainly a number of people in this room, Chris and Adam at the head of that line, we negotiated a peaceful pivot forward. Port is under LAFCO jurisdiction going forward, and the negotiation was just kind of a framework of how the first MSR will be conducted, which will be starting in fiscal year 26. So pleased to report that.
So just a question, Keen, is LAFCO, is the port pay into LAFCO?
Yes.
And they always have?
No, that's now,
Oh.
that was, should be getting a check soon.
This is the third inaugural.
So
Third inaugural as a request that we be part of it.
this is the, we're doing new MSR, so SANDAG, County Water Authority, and now the port.
Are there any other big players in the county or what aren't part of LAFCO?
The airport.
Okay.
We'll be part of it.
Oh. Well, no, I was just funny. Doors.
And the port just got confirmed that city manager is the new CEO.
We're looking forward to working with them.
Oh, yeah, of course.
June 12th.
Thank you for that report. Was that a motion on there?
Strike it from.
I'm not, well,
We're looking forward to that update too.
Any other business for the good of the order? Thank you all for a great year. We are now adjourned.
Christmas holiday.